Hello and welcome to another beastly installation. Today we're going to be installing this beast, an Alpine W900, into this beast, my 1976 GMC pickup truck. I have already cut a hole in the dashboard and mounted a bracket and fed some wires from the subwoofer, the antenna, and the power amp. And today I was focusing my energies on doing some soldering and wiring up the speakers into the wiring harness for this Alpine W900. So I'm just going to set up the camera here, and I'm going to be doing a little soldering demonstration for you. Please bear with me. I first identify the speaker leads by color codes and the positive and negative leads. It's kind of important. And the speaker wire is approximately 18 gauge, could be 16. And I've already wired up most of the speakers, left, right, front, rear, etc. I have one left to do. So I'm just going to cut it off the old wiring harness. Cut off the old wiring harness from this speaker. And just making sure that my leads are all coming out in a straight line, grouped together. I like keeping my wiring relatively organized and neat and tidy. Not always possible. You try to do the best job you can. So I begin by stripping the wire. Fairly straightforward process, about ½ an inch, nothing more. Like this. That's the speaker. The wiring harness here has one more group of leads. Again, strip the wire from the insulation from the wire. Straightforward process. So I take my two wires, and I'll hold them with my index and my forefinger, my thumb, and I turn them, rotate them counterclockwise, approximately half a turn. See how the wire splays out like that? And then I mesh the two together, and then I release the pressure and the wires twist back together, and I give it a final turn for security, firming up the connection. Place the wire. I take my soldering iron, some solder, place the tip on the wire, a little bit of pressure, and just wait for the wire to heat up a bit, and then I apply a little bit of solder to the tip of the soldering iron. It's touching the wire. It sort of all fuses together. I apply just enough solder so that my whole joint gets covered, and I spread the solder out by rubbing the soldering iron back and forth along the wire surface, the exposed wire surface. A little bit on the back as well as the front. The side, it's round, so you want 360-degree coverage on your wire. Basically, you got coverage around the wire. You take a piece of pre-cut electrical tape while the joint's still warm. At 45 degrees, you are going to wrap the tape around the warm wire and warm soldering joint so that you have a nice seal melting the electrical tape into the whole works. And once that cools and shrinks up there, it's by no means watertight, but I'll tell you, it is a good seal and a well soldered joint that will not come undone, I can guarantee it. And you take your other lead and the same process again. Index and thumb counterclockwise, rotate the wires till they spread out. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but mesh the wires together, release the pressure, and the wires ultimately will come back together. Give it a little bit of a twist if you have to. So you got a nice tight fitting joint, and you take your soldering iron again, placing it onto the wires. I'm underneath this time, just to get a little bit of heat. Heat's rising up into the wires, and I apply a little bit of solder to the tip of the iron or gun, whatever you're using. And then once some of that solder starts to get sucked into that wire, you can now take the solder and put it right directly onto the wire wherever you want it to go, and it'll just melt into that wire. If you have to, use your soldering iron to spread out the solder. Make sure you got coverage around the whole joint, 360 degrees. And I used my last piece of tape. So I gotta cut quickly another little piece, just a piece about an inch long, at 45 degrees.